This is a story about how a simple inheritance turned into a shocking discovery. It all started when I inherited a storage facility from my late uncle. Little did I know this would lead me to uncover a scheme that had been quietly draining our community for years. When my HOA turned my newly inherited storage facility into a neighborhood free-for-all, I uncovered a shady scheme that had been quietly robbing us blind for years. What would you do if you found out your neighbors were using your kindness as a cover for fraud? Your uncle left you what? Melissa, my wife, nearly spit out her coffee when I showed her the will. The lawyer's letter felt heavier than it should have. Uncle Frank left me his storage facility, Maple Road, right outside our neighborhood, Sycamore Heights. I was still trying to wrap my head around it. You know the one, I said. Small warehouse, blue roof. We pass it every time we hit the grocery store. Melissa dabbed coffee from her chin. Well, that's different, she said. What are you going to do with a storage place? I shrugged, flipping through the attached photos. It wasn't massive, roughly 5,000 square feet, 20 units, a tiny office, all wrapped in a chain-link fence. Needed fresh paint, maybe a roof. But Uncle Frank had kept it in decent shape. Probably sell it, I told her. Could finally do that kitchen upgrade you've been dreaming about. Melissa tilted her head. Or keep it. Storage units are always in demand. Could be good monthly income. Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Diane Reynolds was on our porch. Perfect blonde bob, untouched by the breeze. HOA president, and legendary for being 2 steps ahead of everyone's business. David, I just heard the news. Her smile was wide, but didn't touch her eyes. Mind if I come in? 10 minutes later, she was perched at our kitchen table with a mug of tea clutched between her fingers. This is just perfect timing, she gushed. The HOA's been desperate for a spot to store holiday decorations and maintenance gear. That shed behind the clubhouse? Total disaster. That's unfortunate, I said carefully. We've been saving up for a new one, but construction costs are just wild these days. She leaned in a little. Would you maybe consider letting us use just a small corner of your new place? Just 1 unit. It had meant so much to the neighborhood. I glanced at Melissa. She gave a little shrug. It didn't seem like a big deal. I guess I could spare 1 unit, I said. At least until I decide what to do with the property. Diane clapped her hands like she'd won a prize. Wonderful. Let's start with a 3-month agreement. I'll have Tom drop off paperwork tomorrow. After she left, Melissa raised an eyebrow. That was generous. It's just 1 of 20 units, I said. Temporary. What's the worst that could happen? 3 days later, I drove over to start clearing out Uncle Frank's stuff. As I turned onto Maple Road, I slammed the brakes. Hard. The whole front lot was packed with cars and trucks. People were unloading everything from furniture to what looked like an actual boat. I parked on the curb and waded through the chaos. In the middle of it all stood Diane, clipboard in hand, orchestrating the madness like an air traffic controller. Diane! What is going on? I had to yell to be heard. She turned with a glowing smile. David, isn't it amazing? I told everyone about your generous offer. Our agreement was for 1 unit. For HOA equipment, I said, watching in horror as Mr. Gunderson wheeled a motorcycle into Unit 6. Well, yes, technically, but after I brought it up at the emergency board meeting, everyone was thrilled. This solves so many problems. My jaw nearly hit the pavement. You can't just... The Jensens are moving and needed a spot. The Wilsons are remodeling, and the Gundersons had nowhere to store their summer gear. I spotted her husband Tom backing up his truck, loaded with patio furniture, and a vintage pinball machine. This is not what I agreed to, I said sharply. You need to stop this. Diane's smile thinned. She grabbed my arm and dropped her voice. The board voted to amend the bylaws. Any shared-use property must be available to all paying members. Since you designated your facility as community storage, everyone has equal rights now. She handed me a paper. Bylaw Amendment 47.3. Community Storage Access. This is absurd, I snapped. I own that property. It's not even inside HOA limits. Actually, Diane said sweetly, Tom checked the county maps. Your property line falls 8 feet into HOA jurisdiction. I looked around helplessly. Mrs. Patel was arranging Christmas lights in Unit 12. The high school wrestling coach was hauling dumbbells into number 15. Every door had a handwritten name tag taped on. You need to put a stop to this, I said. I never agreed to let the whole neighborhood use my facility. Diane's smile turned icy. David, you're causing a scene. Do you really want to be the guy who pulls the plug on a community resource after everyone's already moved in? People had stopped to watch. Karen Mitchell, our street's self-appointed decoration enforcer, crossed her arms. Is there a problem? She asked. I already cleared my garage for my new home gym. You can't back out now. I felt boxed in. 20 pairs of eyes stared. These weren't strangers. These were neighbors, block party people, birthday party people. We'll discuss this later, I muttered. But this wasn't the deal. Diane patted my shoulder. We'll talk. In the meantime, can you help the Andersons with that armoire? It's going in Unit 8. I walked back to my car, that bylaw amendment crumpling in my hand. One small favor had somehow turned into a full-scale invasion, and apparently I had no legal right to stop it. Driving home, my phone buzzed. New email. Subject: Community Newsletter. Grand opening today. I opened it and nearly gagged. Local homeowner donates storage facility to neighborhood, it read. My name right there in the first paragraph. Diane had told everyone I'd gifted full access to all HOA members. A heartwarming act of community spirit. I pulled over, hands shaking. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was spiraling into a nightmare. How do you even fight an HOA? What rights did I have? And why did I feel like this had been planned from the beginning? Locks are only useful if you hold the keys. I learned that the hard way 1 week later when I arrived to find brand new padlocks on every unit. Ones I didn't have combinations for. Sorry, David. Karen Mitchell again. She was stacking storage bins in Uncle Frank's old office. Someone reported suspicious activity last night. Had to change the locks. This is my property. My voice cracked. Who authorized this? The HOA Security Committee. She didn't even look up. Diane said you'll get a master key soon. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. Karen, this has gone way too far. I never donated anything. She turned, hands on hips. That's not what the newsletter said or what Diane told the board. Her eyes narrowed. Are you saying our HOA president forged a document? Before I could answer, my phone rang. My boss. I was late for a 9:30 meeting. I left, promising myself I'd sort this out after work, but by 5 p.m. things had only gotten worse. The lot was full again, people unloading boxes like it was moving day. Someone had even draped a hand-painted sign across the building. Sycamore Heights Community Storage, covering Uncle Frank's old business name. I spotted Mrs. Patel struggling with a heavy box and helped her out. My husband's bowling trophies, she said, beaming. We're redoing the basement. I'm sorry, I told her, but there's been a misunderstanding. I never agreed to this. Her smile faded. But the newsletter said, I know what it said. I cut in gently. But Diane never asked me to open the whole place. She looked confused. But the paperwork had your signature. My blood ran cold. My signature? I asked. Can you describe it? It had the HOA logo. Said something about property donation. Continuing your uncle's community service legacy. Uncle Frank, the man who once called the cops on kids for playing too close to his fence? Community service? Yeah, right. I thanked her and drove straight to Diane's house, rage bubbling. This wasn't confusion. This was fraud. Her white colonial sat smugly under trimmed hedges and matching flower beds. But Diane wasn't home. Tom was mowing the lawn. "David," he waved, cutting the engine. "What's up?" "Your wife forged my name on an HOA document," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "Where is she?" His smile vanished. "That's a bold accusation." "It's also illegal," I shot back. "Is she home?" "Board meeting. Clubhouse." His tone turned sharp. "Be careful throwing around words like illegal." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "Just friendly advice," he said, restarting the mower. I drove straight to the clubhouse, white-knuckled. What was happening? How had this escalated to forgery and veiled threats? Why did they want that facility so badly? I arrived just as the board meeting ended. Diane was last to leave, locking up. "David, what a surprise!" "We need to talk," I said, "about the fake document, with my forged signature." "Fake?" She blinked. "Not sure what you mean. You showed Mrs. Patel a paper claiming I donated the facility. That's forgery." Her smile faltered, just for a second, then returned. "There must be some confusion. I showed them the updated bylaws and the agreement you signed." "I never signed anything." "Well," she said with a shrug, "that's not how I remember it." She glanced at her watch with exaggerated emphasis. "I'm already late for dinner. Let's bring this up at the next board meeting. If you have complaints, feel free to submit them in writing for the agenda." She turned on her heel and walked off just as Raj approached me, his expression cautious. "Everything all right?" "Not even close," I admitted. "They've essentially hijacked my property and are pretending I handed it over voluntarily." Raj glanced around, lowering his voice. "You're not the first. The Schmidts lost their RV parking last year the same way. They had county permits and everything, but the HOA dug up some obscure clause and shut it down." "How do they keep getting away with this?" I asked. "Because most people don't fight," he said, shrugging. "It's expensive. It's a hassle. And Diane makes sure those who push back suffer." "What kind of suffering?" I asked. Raj winced. "The Schmidts got daily violation notices for over a month. Mailbox size, overgrown lawn, even a wind chime they'd had for years. Each came with a fine. Eventually, they gave up." A chill ran down my spine. She can't just steal what's mine. "Maybe not by the book," Raj said, "but she's got access to the HOA's legal war chest. You'd be paying out of pocket." I drove home in a daze, trying to make sense of the madness. The storage building wasn't even that valuable. It needed work. But it was mine. Uncle Frank gave it to me, not Diane Reynolds, and not the HOA. When I pulled into the driveway, something was off. My trash bins weren't in their usual spot. I found them tipped over on the front lawn, garbage scattered across the grass. A bright yellow notice was taped to my front door. "Garbage container storage violation. $50 fine. Repeat offenses will result in increased penalties." I checked the time. Barely after 7 p.m. Trash day wasn't until tomorrow. This wasn't about the bins. It was a message. Inside, Melissa was on the phone, her face pale. When she hung up, she turned to me worried. "That was Amanda. Across the street, she said we should check our mailbox." I stepped outside again and opened the box. Inside was a thick stack of official-looking envelopes from the HOA. 6 violations, each one for a separate infraction. Unauthorized garden edging, too many bird feeders, non-compliant porch lighting, mailbox not up to code, unapproved window screens, and, most ridiculous of all, disruptive lawn ornament for the ceramic turtle our daughter made in school. Total $450. All dated today. Melissa appeared beside me, scanning the letters. This isn't a coincidence. No, I said, jaw tight. This is Diane sending a warning. She's letting us know what happens when someone doesn't roll over. What do we do? Melissa asked. I stared at the stack in my hands, fury rising. They thought they could bully me into giving up, that I'd fold like the Schmidts, like everyone before me. They were wrong. First, I said, we're going to find out what makes that storage facility so important to them. Then, we're going to push back. Melissa looked uncertain. But they run everything. Not everything, I said, finally cracking a smile. Uncle Frank kept records, detailed ones, and I bet they hold answers, especially about those property lines. What I didn't know then was that buried in my uncle's dusty old files was a secret that could upend the entire HOA. Your property doesn't belong to you anymore. Karen's smug voice echoed in my head as I slammed my car door shut. No one takes what's mine. No one. I marched into the county clerk's office, clutching deed papers like weapons. Behind the desk sat Gloria, a silver-haired woman with glasses perched on her nose. Someone stole my storage building, I said, louder than intended. Heads turned. Gloria blinked. Stole a building? That's a first. Sit down. Start from the top. For the next hour, I laid out everything. My uncle's will, the property deed, the HOA amendment, even the newsletter. Honey, Gloria said, tapping the deed with a fingernail, an HOA can't just claim private property with a bylaw update. That's like me saying your car is mine because I made a rule. She pulled up county records. Now look here. This is your parcel. See this red line? That's the HOA boundary. She traced it slowly, then paused. Would you look at that? Your building isn't even inside their jurisdiction. My jaw dropped. They have no claim at all? I asked. Not even a little, she said, printing the boundary map. Oh, and get this. The county fined your HOA 3 times last year for illegal equipment storage. They were given a deadline to fix it or face steep penalties. When's the deadline? Gloria clicked through files. Next Tuesday. They're running out of time. Armed with new info, I met up with Miguel, a real estate attorney and friend. After reviewing the documents, he drafted a cease and desist letter. This should stop them, Miguel said, and if not, we'll file for an injunction. I decided to deliver the news in person at the next HOA meeting. I got there early and watched from the back as neighbors filed in. Some smiled, others looked away. Diane struck her gavel. First order of business. New signage for our community storage facility. Actually, I said, standing, I'd like to speak about that. Diane froze. David, how great to see you. We were just reviewing sign options for the building you tried to steal from me, I said, walking to the front. I've spent this week brushing up on property law. The room went quiet. Tom tugged at his collar. Did you all know, I said, laying the map down, my facility sits outside HOA territory, by exactly 12 feet, surveyed and confirmed yesterday. Karen jumped up. That's not possible. We checked. Did you? I said, staring her down. Or did you just hope no one else would? I dropped another paper on the table. And here's the real kicker. The HOA has been cited 3 times for improper equipment storage, facing $10,000 in fines if it isn't fixed by next week. Diane's face drained of color. We've been transparent, she started. Really? I held up one final document. Then what's this? A contractor's quote for a $48,000 facility build, dated 1 day before you knocked on my door, acting like it was all for the community. The room exploded. People turned, whispering, pointing. "You plan to take my building to avoid paying a fine," I said. "You changed the rules to justify it." Karen stood, indignant. "This is outrageous. We were doing you a favor by cleaning up that eyesore." "Favor?" I laughed. "You mean trespassing, stealing, lying." Diane slammed the gavel. "Order! There's a legally binding agreement." "No, there isn't," I said, sliding Miguel's letter across the table. "My lawyer disagrees. You've got until this weekend to get your things out." Someone clapped in the back, then another. Soon, half the room was applauding. Diane's face turned crimson. "This meeting is over," she shouted. As people left, several stopped to pat me on the back. "You did the right thing," one whispered. Outside, I spotted Raj. He joined me on the walk to my car. "That was something," he said, "but watch your back. Diane doesn't lose quietly." "What else can she do?" I asked. Raj looked grim. "I've been here 10 years. When the Johnsons asked about pool renovations, they got flooded with citations. When the Garcias questioned noise policies, their home addition permit vanished overnight." I stiffened. "She'll retaliate?" I asked. "She will," Raj said, "and Tom works for city planning. They've got connections." I thought of my yard, the new fence, my small home business running under an HOA exemption. "What should I do?" Raj gave a tight smile. "I'm not saying quit. I'm saying be smart. Start documenting everything, photos, measurements, dates. Trust me, they're already planning their next move." I drove home, adrenaline fading, dread creeping in. I'd won this round, but the war was just beginning. And judging by the look Diane gave me as I left, she wasn't just mad. She wanted revenge. What would she strike first? The house? My business? Or something I hadn't even thought of? At 6:17 a.m., the roar of a chainsaw jolted me from sleep. I leapt out of bed and ran to the window. 3 workers in neon vests were hacking down my beloved oak tree. I bolted outside in my pajamas, heart racing. "Hey, stop! What are you doing to my tree?" They hesitated. One man stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "HOA emergency removal order, sir." He pointed at the paper. "This tree's been labeled a safety hazard." "Hazard?" I snapped. "It's healthy. I had an arborist inspect it just last spring." He handed over the notice. "Not what this says. Report claims root damage, potential risk to the sidewalk and overhead lines." The inspection was dated just the day before, signed by Diane Reynolds, of course. My hands shook. "This is my yard. That tree's on my property." "Sir, we've got authorization. If you've got issues, take it up with your HOA. We're just doing our job." I called Melissa at work. "They're cutting down the oak. Our oak, the one with the swing." "What? Why?" she asked, stunned. "Because it's payback," I said, as a massive branch crashed to the ground. Pure, petty payback. I didn't even change. I drove straight to Diane's house in my slippers. She answered in tennis gear, racket in hand. "David, what a surprise. I'm just heading to my morning match." "You know why I'm here," I said, trying to stay calm. "That tree. My kids played under it. We took family photos there." She tilted her head, all faux sympathy. "Oh, such an unfortunate matter. But the inspection flagged it as a liability." "It was perfectly fine until I exposed your storage stunt," I shot back. Her smile faded. "I'd be careful making accusations like that. Defamation is a serious matter." She checked her watch. "Speaking of, I'm running late." "Oh. And I noticed your fence yesterday. It's about 6 inches over regulation. Expect a notice." Then she brushed past me like I wasn't there. When I got home, nothing remained but a stump. Melissa was in the yard. wiping her eyes. 30 years old, she whispered. That tree was part of our lives. The next morning, a bright pink citation was taped to our door. Fence height violation, $150 fine. The day after that, a notice about our mailbox, $100. Then came the bird feeder violation, $75. Decorative stones, $50. House number size, $80. They're trying to bleed us dry, Melissa said, eyeing the stack of notices, and we weren't the only ones. Raj got slammed with 6 citations in 3 days after confronting Diane at the mailboxes. The Schmidts, who had applauded my HOA meeting speech, suddenly had complaints about their award-winning rose bushes. This has gone too far, I told Melissa. This isn't just about my building anymore. We invited Raj and the Schmidts over for dinner. Harold Schmidt, retired, wore suspenders and sharp as ever, brought a thick file of documents. They picked the wrong people to mess with, Mrs. Schmidt said, passing around salad. Harold practiced contract law for 40 years. Harold nodded. This is bigger than petty HOA games. I've been combing through their finances. It's public info. They just hope no one checks. He laid out papers across the table. Take this. $85,000 collected last year for playground upgrades. Melissa frowned. You mean the same playground that's still broken? Exactly, Harold said. And here, $40,000 paid to a company called Triple R Construction. Raj leaned in. Tom Reynolds owns that company. Diane's brother-in-law. I confirmed it with the state business registry. My jaw dropped. They're stealing. From all of us. Harold gave a grim nod. Landscaping contracts, consulting fees, bogus administrative costs, they've been draining the HOA account for years. Mrs. Schmidt slid another paper forward, and anyone who asks questions gets targeted. Remember the Hendersons, she added. They requested an audit. Suddenly, their yard was flooded with violations. They moved out instead of fighting. Raj pointed to a note. That's what happened with your building. They needed a fix for their own citation. Rather than pay, they tried to take yours. I stared at the paperwork. This is actual criminal fraud. Exactly, Harold said. And I have a plan to expose them, but it'll take some risk. Raj leaned closer. I think we fake a surrender. What? Melissa and I said in unison. I mean, play it like you're giving up. Tell Diane you've reconsidered and want the storage building to be used by the community. But secretly, Harold chimed in, we document everything, set a trap. If we catch them misusing their roles, we can take it to the county prosecutor. I've got a guy who installs surveillance systems, Raj added, voice low, discreet and secure. As the plan unfolded, a mix of nerves and adrenaline settled in my chest. This wasn't just about my tree, or even my building. It was about stopping years of intimidation, theft, and silence. If we fail, Melissa whispered, they'll make it unbearable for us. We might have to leave. If we stay silent, Mrs. Schmidt replied, they'll just keep doing this to others. I looked at the stump in the yard, the tree that had shaded 30 summers of our lives. I'm in, I said firmly, but we need to be strategic. Diane and Tom have influence. Then we'll need allies, Raj said, smiling. My cousin writes for the Daily Ledger. You open to going public? The room went quiet. We all knew what that meant. No going back. Were we ready to start a war in our neighborhood? Or was it finally time someone stood up? They took the bait, I whispered to Raj. From across the street, we watched Diane and Tom sneak into the storage facility with boxes marked Financials, 11:43 p.m. The hidden cameras recorded everything in crisp night vision. Their anxious glances, their hushed voices, and more importantly, what they were trying to bury. 3 days earlier, I'd thrown them a curveball. I sent an email to the whole HOA. I've decided to grant full access to the storage building for community use. Melissa looked at me like I'd lost it. "Trust me," I said, showing her the tiny cameras hidden inside. "This isn't surrender. It's bait." Harold had uncovered a bombshell. The county was already looking into the HOA's missing playground funds. What Diane and Tom didn't know was we had tipped off the investigators. Raj had predicted it perfectly. They'd panic and try to move or destroy records. They just didn't expect we'd be watching. The next morning, I found Karen rearranging boxes inside. "Just reorganizing," she said, overly casual. "Go for it," I replied, all smiles. "I trust the HOA completely now." Her look of suspicion was priceless. "What changed your mind?" "Let's just say I've come to appreciate community values," I said, watching her glance nervously toward Tom's stash of boxes. "Oh, and don't forget about tomorrow night's special meeting." "Of course. Diane says it's crucial." She didn't know. We'd called the meeting, not Diane. Every resident in Sycamore Heights had gotten a flyer. HOA fees increasing again? Come find out why. When I arrived, the community center buzzed. People who hadn't shown up in years were suddenly interested. Diane looked rattled but composed herself. "Before we begin," she said with her usual tight smile, "I'd like to thank David for generously donating the storage facility to the neighborhood." Polite applause rippled through the room. I nodded to Raj. "Time to move." "Actually," I said, standing, "I'd like to explain what I really gave. We need to stick to the agenda." Diane snapped. "I think everyone wants to hear this," Harold said from the back, "especially before voting on that 15% dues increase." The room quieted. Phones were put away. All eyes on me. "I haven't donated my property," I said calmly. "What I've given access to, at least temporarily, is something more valuable. The truth." Raj fired up a projector. Mrs. Schmidt passed out packets. Inside were documents, HOA budgets, inflated contracts, unexplained fees. "Here's $40,000 paid to a construction company owned by Tom Reynolds," I continued, "and nearly $50,000 missing from the playground fund." People flipped pages. Murmurs turned into gasps. Tom stood, red-faced. "This is slander. You can't prove any of this." "Actually, we can," I said calmly, nodding to Raj, who pressed play on the video. The screen lit up with crystal-clear footage. Diane and Tom sneaking into my storage unit the night before, whispering as they stashed boxes. "If anyone finds those invoices—" "We're done," Tom's voice echoed. Karen gasped aloud. Diane on screen muttered, "We'll blame it on the old board if we have to. No one can tie anything to us once this stuff is gone." "And there's more," I added, as the video continued. "Yesterday, we gave this footage to County Prosecutor Jenkins. An official investigation is now underway." The room erupted. Neighbors shouted, some calling for resignations, others just stunned. Amid the noise, Karen looked like the wind had been knocked out of her. When she got to me, her voice was barely audible. "You set us up." "No, Karen," I said. "Diane and Tom set everyone up. For years." Across the room, Diane and Tom were slowly backing away, panic on their faces. Mrs. Schmidt, faster than expected for someone her age, stepped in front of the exit. "The police are waiting outside," she said with a sharp nod. "They've got some questions." As officers walked in, I didn't feel triumphant. Just a deep sadness for what our neighborhood had become, and a quiet resolve to help rebuild it. The shock on my neighbors' faces said it all. If we couldn't trust the people chosen to protect our community, who could we trust? "You're not going to believe this," Jeff said, bursting through my front door the next morning. "Police are at Diane and Tom's. They're hauling out boxes." After weeks of waiting, the investigation was finally moving. The scandal spread through Sycamore Heights like wildfire. Some folks took sides. Most just stood in disbelief. The day after the meeting, people clustered in driveways and by mailboxes, whispering about stolen playground funds and backdoor deals. My phone didn't stop ringing. "What happens now?" became the question on everyone's lips. I found Karen sitting on a bench near the duck pond, staring into the distance. When she saw me, she looked down. "Did you know I was involved?" she asked softly. "No," I said honestly. "I think you were just following Diane's lead." Tears welled up. She made me feel important, like I was guarding the community from people who didn't care about the rules. She twisted her hands in her lap. "I was awful to you, about your tree." That admission surprised me. Karen Mitchell admitting fault. Maybe there was hope for our neighborhood after all. A week later, flyers showed up on every doorstep. Emergency community meeting. Let's rebuild. Raj had booked the local library's meeting room. No one wanted to go back to the old HOA space. It felt tainted. "We have two options," Harold said, standing at the front of the packed room. "We can sit in anger, or we can start fresh." Most of the board had stepped down. The rest looked lost. No one seemed willing to take charge. "I nominate Mrs. Schmidt for interim president," I said, rising from my seat. The room went quiet. "She's lived here the longest. Her husband was a lawyer, and she was the first to raise the alarm." Karen stood next. "I second that. She's honest. That's what we need." Mrs. Schmidt gave a nod that reminded me of my old school principal. "First change. All HOA financials will be posted online. Every single dollar, full transparency." The room clapped, hesitantly at first. "Second," she continued, "no more silly rules about bird feeders or garden stones. Guidelines should protect home values, not stifle creativity." Louder applause now. "And third," she looked straight at me. "David, what's your plan for that storage facility?" Everyone turned. I could have reclaimed it right then, closed the book on all of this. Instead, I said, "I'm turning it into a real community space, not run by the HOA but managed by a non-profit. Open to everyone." Gasps. Whispers. Someone called out, "After everything, why?" "Because Diane and Tom don't get to destroy what community means. They abuse their power, but that doesn't mean we give up on each other." 2 months later, I stood in awe as volunteers brought the old warehouse back to life. Melissa had designed a space with a tool-sharing station, meeting area, and a cozy little coffee nook. Raj's firm donated shelves. The Schmidts brought chairs from their basement. But the biggest surprise was Karen, arriving with paint cans and brushes. "I want to help," she said. "I need to make this right." We painted together, bright yellow for the meeting room. When we finished, she said quietly, "I'm selling. Too many ghosts here." "Where to?" I asked. "My sister's place. No HOA," she said with a dry laugh, one that sounded real this time. On opening day of the new Pine Hollow Community Center, nearly 100 neighbors came. Kids ran in the yard. Adults mingled awkwardly at first, then with growing warmth. Melissa squeezed my hand. "Funny how things turn out," she said. "You inherited a warehouse and ended up building a community." "A lesson in surprise gifts," I chuckled. That evening, I checked the mailbox. An envelope, no return address. Inside, one cashier's check for $12,000 and a handwritten note, "For the tree, I'm sorry. Tom." The next day, I brought the check to the nursery. Bought 20 oak saplings. That weekend, neighbors, some who hadn't spoken in years, grabbed shovels and got to work. We replanted every spot where Diane had ordered removals. Kids carried watering cans twice their size, and Mrs. Schmidt orchestrated everything from a lawn chair with her trusty clipboard. As I stood back, hands dirty and heart full, Jeff stepped beside me. You know what amazes me? He said. One person standing up made all this happen. I shook my head. Not one. All of us. Looking around at what we'd built, messy, imperfect but growing, I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can give isn't money or property. It's the willingness to speak up when something's wrong. Would our neighborhood have found its voice without that storage facility mess? Maybe not. But I'll be forever grateful it happened.